The destroyer, USS Hadley, faced a devastating kamikaze assault, but managed to survive the brutal attacks off Okinawa on May 11, 1945. The American military's broader goal in the Pacific during World War II was to push towards Japan, with Okinawa as a critical stepping stone. Located in the Ryukyu Islands just 340 miles from the Japanese home island of Kyushu, Okinawa became the target of a massive invasion that began on April 1, 1945, coinciding with both Easter Sunday and April Fool's Day. The island, once captured, would serve as a vital base for launching air raids and staging an eventual invasion of Japan. The battle for Okinawa was one of the bloodiest in the Pacific theater. American forces suffered around 39,000 casualties, including those killed, wounded, and missing. The island wasn't officially secured until late June. The Japanese losses were even more staggering, approximately 110,000 killed and about 11,000 captured. Throughout the 83-day struggle, American Marines and Army troops relied heavily on the Navy, which provided essential support and supply lines offshore. However, the longer the ships remained near Okinawa, the more they became targets for Japanese air attacks, especially the terrifying kamikaze missions. Vice Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner, anticipating a fierce defense from the Japanese, established an early warning system of 16 radar picket stations surrounding Okinawa. These picket lines were designed to detect incoming air attacks, giving naval vessels and fighter aircraft time to react. Each station typically included 1 or 2 Navy destroyers, smaller support vessels, and crews responsible for monitoring radar screens. Their mission was to engage enemy aircraft before they could reach key assets like battleships, aircraft carriers, or vulnerable supply ships. Destroyers equipped with fighter direction systems coordinated the combat air patrols protecting the fleet. For the Japanese, Okinawa was a last stand. Their military and cultural code, rooted in the ancient Bushido tradition, emphasized honor, loyalty, and a willingness to die for the emperor. Hundreds of young men were trained as kamikaze pilots, tasked with crashing their bomb-laden planes into American ships. These suicide attackers were known as kamikaze, meaning divine wind, a name inspired by the typhoons that had thwarted Mongol invasions centuries earlier. Many of the planes used in these missions were outdated and flown by barely trained pilots. Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki's 5th Air Fleet launched massive kamikaze attacks, intending to inflict such severe damage that the American advance would be halted. Around 4,500 aircraft were designated for the campaign. The code names for these operations disguised their grim purpose. For instance, Kikusui, or floating chrysanthemums, involved wave after wave of kamikaze assaults. One special weapon, the Oka, or cherry blossom, was a human-guided flying bomb carrying over a ton of explosives. Launched from bombers, these aircraft could reach speeds of 650 miles per hour, aiming directly for U.S. ships. Pilots often participated in farewell rituals before their final missions, drinking sake, tying on headbands, and leaving behind personal mementos. One pilot, Ikio Atsuka, wrote a farewell letter filled with affection and hope, stating that he would choose his target beneath the full moon and show his ability to die bravely. Despite their determination, the Japanese had limited resources. By the time the Americans landed on Okinawa, Ugaki could not mount a full-scale response due to fuel shortages and American bombardment. The first major kamikaze mission wasn't launched until April 6th. From then on, the American fleet endured relentless suicide attacks. It was difficult for U.S. sailors to comprehend that their enemy's primary goal was to die while causing maximum destruction. During the Okinawa campaign, approximately 1,500 kamikaze pilots died. They sank 29 U.S. Navy ships, damaged 120 more, and killed over 3,000 American sailors, with thousands more wounded. The psychological toll on the survivors was immense. Some sailors, overwhelmed by the unending attacks, even took their own lives. Destroyers and patrol craft on the radar picket lines bore the brunt of the kamikaze assaults. While major vessels like aircraft carriers and battleships were also hit, the smaller ships were often the primary targets. Still, the crews of these destroyers displayed extraordinary courage and resilience, fighting under extreme conditions and helping to write one of the most heroic chapters in naval warfare. Among the many stories of bravery, the tale of the USS Hugh W. Hadley stands out. This Sumner-class destroyer experienced one of the most intense kamikaze attacks of the war. On the morning of May 11, 1945, at Radar Picket Station 15 in the East China Sea, about 60 miles north of Point Bolo on Okinawa's east coast, the Hadley faced its greatest challenge. Built by the Bethlehem Steel Company at Terminal Island, California, the 2,200-ton ship was named in honor of a Navy lieutenant killed in the Solomons in 1942. Commissioned in November 1944, she was led by Commander L.C. Chamberlain and later by Commander Baron J. Mullen. The Hadley was heavily armed, equipped with 5-inch guns, torpedo tubes, anti-aircraft weapons, depth charge projectors, and more. She had a crew of 336 officers and sailors. After completing training and escort missions, the Hadley sailed toward Okinawa in March 1945 as part of the invasion fleet. She arrived just before the landings and quickly engaged Japanese aircraft, shooting down a Mitsubishi G-4M Betty bomber on March 31st. Initially assigned to anti-submarine duty, the Hadley later returned to Okinawa's waters to resume patrols. It was during this time that she faced the full fury of the kamikaze onslaught, fighting valiantly to protect the fleet and survive an attack that would mark her place in history. The Hadley and the destroyer RH were assigned to radar picket duty the next day. When the engine of a Marine F-4U Corsair fighter failed, the pilot was forced to ditch in the sea, and the Hadley quickly rescued him from the Pacific waters. The constant danger from kamikaze attacks meant long hours at general quarters. The crew was told that the destroyer Aaron Ward, stationed just south of their location and built at Terminal Island shipyards, had suffered severe damage from 6 kamikaze hits on May 4th and had almost sunk. Only 1,000 yards off Hadley's port quarter, the destroyer Shea was also struck by a piloted missile, causing thick smoke to rise into the sky. As the sun climbed higher, the Hadley, which lacked proper fighter direction equipment, did its best to manage the combat air patrol in the area until relieved a few hours later. The ship made a quick stop at the harbor of Karama-Redo southwest of Okinawa and then patrolled around Hagushi Bay, a major supply point near the mouth of the Bishi River on Okinawa. It was the dividing line between the zones held by the 1st and 6th Marine Divisions in the north and the U.S. Army's 96th and 7th Divisions in the south. On May 7th, the destroyer Brown, one of the few radar picket destroyers to survive kamikaze attacks so far, was joined by the Hadley. After receiving its fighter direction equipment, Hadley was positioned at Radar Picket Station 15. By the afternoon of May 10th, Hadley was accompanied by LCS 82, 83, and 84, landing craft support, and LSMR-193, a rocket-firing landing ship medium. The destroyer USS Evans, a Fletcher-class vessel under Commander R.G. Archer, was also present. American sailors grimly nicknamed the smaller ships trailing destroyers on the picket line pallbearers. On the morning of May 11, 1945, calm hung over Radar Picket Station 15, but everyone knew the peace would not last. At 6:36 a.m., a lone Japanese jet was detected by a patrol of 12 Corsairs. The Hadley made its first direct contact of the day at 7:45 a.m., spotting a Japanese float plane. Just as breakfast was about to be served, the general quarters bell rang again, followed by the tense command to commence firing on the starboard side. Doug Aiken, a young officer aboard the Hadley who would later become a Navy captain, recalled how the low-flying float plane came directly at them. The Corsair patrol and radar had failed to detect it in time, but the Hadley's vigilant gunners shot it down just in time. The ship remained at general quarters as more attacks were expected. Commander Mullaney later reported that both the Hadley and Evans engaged enemy aircraft. One plane initially headed for the Evans but veered toward Hadley instead. It was shot down at 1,200 yards, a warning of the onslaught to come. What followed was a massive aerial assault involving over 150 enemy aircraft, including conventional bombers, fighters, and the dreaded piloted Oka rockets from Japan's Kikusui No. 6 operation. For the next 2 hours, the radar picket ships fought desperately. The Corsairs shot down about 40 planes, but many more broke through. Mullaney wrote in his report that at 7:55 a.m., numerous enemy planes were detected approaching from the north, 55 miles away. The Hadley's Combat Information Center tracked groups of planes arriving in waves, some at high altitudes, others low. The fighter director officer estimated 156 enemy aircraft in total. One division of the Corsair patrol was sent to intercept, and eventually all aircraft were committed to the defense. Radio transmissions revealed that the Corsairs had shot down between 40 and 50 planes within 10 miles of the Hadley. Still, many kamikaze aircraft broke through and targeted the two destroyers, which were separated by 2 to 3 miles and had little ability to support each other. The Hadley's gunners took down a Japanese Val dive bomber that came in fast and low. It was hit at 5,000 yards, and its wing was torn off just 100 yards from the ship. It crashed into the sea moments later. The sky was thick with enemy aircraft. The Marine Corsairs continued to engage even after running out of ammunition, performing mock attacks that confused novice Japanese pilots into crashing. Lieutenant J. Thomas Dwyer of the Hadley described the planes circling the ships like wolves around a campfire. The Hadley shot down 4 Japanese planes early in the battle and 12 more in the half hour between 8 and 9 a.m. Meanwhile, the Evans was under severe attack from all directions. It shot down 15 planes and helped bring down 4 more. Both destroyers raced in circles at 27 knots, swinging their rudders hard over to bring every gun to bear. At 8:35 a.m., the Hadley turned sharply to avoid a kamikaze dive bomber that came within 1,000 feet and crashed into the sea just 20 feet from the stern. At 9 a.m., the two ships were about 3 miles apart. Tragedy struck the Evans when multiple planes hit it. Lieutenant James M. Smith described whirlwinds of enemy aircraft attacking from every direction. The ship's own gunfire created a haze that made it difficult to spot the enemy. After over an hour of non-stop combat, a kamikaze broke through and hit near the port bow, flooding a compartment. More planes followed. One exploded near the engineering spaces, cutting all power. The Evans lay dead in the water, her executive officer thrown overboard and rescued by a quick-thinking seaman. The damage control crew's heroic efforts prevented the ship from sinking. It was towed by the fleet tug USS Cree to Karama Retto for emergency repairs, then sent to Saipan, Pearl Harbor, and finally to the shipyard at Mare Island, California. 32 crew members aboard Evans were killed and 27 wounded. Yet the ship survived. The Hadley kept fighting, and the smaller support ships gave everything they had. Gunners aboard LSMR 193 fired their lone 5-inch gun as fast as they could. Each blast shook the ship violently, but they held firm. Corsairs dove and twisted through the sky, even risking friendly fire. The Hadley fought on, a steel wall against overwhelming odds, nearly broken by the force of the enemy's fury. Just after the USS Evans was damaged, 10 enemy planes were spotted approaching the warship. With the Evans out of action and 4 support ships 2 miles away, the USS Hadley stood alone, defending herself for 20 minutes. Commander Mullaney later reported that at 9:20 a.m., all 10 planes attacked the Hadley at once. 4 came in on the starboard bow, 4 on the port bow, and 2 from the rear. Despite the chaos, the Hadley's crew shot down all 10 planes in a stunning display of firepower and coordination. The Hadley, however, did not escape unscathed. Though eyewitness accounts varied, it's widely believed that 3 kamikaze planes and a 550-pound bomb struck the ship during a brutal 4-minute attack. The first plane hit the aft port 40mm gun mount, killing the crew instantly. Explosions shook the ship, lifting it from the water. Another aircraft hit midship on the starboard side near the waterline, causing severe flooding and killing many in the engine and fire compartments. A third plane struck between the afterstack and foremast, but caused minimal damage as it slid off into the sea. 3 kamikaze hits in total, 1 minor and 2 devastating, nearly crippled the ship. The second impact exposed the ship's engineering spaces to the sea, and the explosion beneath the hull jolted the ship like a depth charge. The third plane struck the aft deckhouse, causing catastrophic destruction. One report stated that an OK bomb, dropped by a Japanese bomber at 9:05 a.m., struck the aft deck, knocking out weapon systems. The last kamikaze hit at the waterline. In total, the Hadley was bombed once, struck by 2 suicide planes, and hit by another suicide plane in the rigging. Commander Mullaney described the destruction as terrible. Flames and smoke engulfed the destroyer, many sailors were wounded or killed, and another kamikaze narrowly missed, destroyed by the few remaining guns before it could impact. The sky cleared of enemies as quickly as they had appeared, but the damage was done. The Hadley was dead in the water, listing to starboard, her stern submerged and close to capsizing. The ship's torpedoes, heated by surrounding fires, threatened to explode and destroy the vessel entirely. Determined not to let the Hadley go down in disgrace, Mullaney ordered all American flags and any available colors to be raised. Fires raged aft of the second stack, ammunition exploded, and both main guns were disabled. The crew had to abandon their stations. Some jumped overboard while others gathered at the bow for further orders. The ship was covered in thick black smoke, and all seemed lost as Hadley could no longer defend herself. The chief engineer and damage control officer informed Mullaney that the main engine spaces were completely flooded. Engineers shut down the forward boilers to prevent an explosion. Life rafts and flotation devices were thrown into the sea as the order to abandon ship was given. Wounded sailors and remaining crew members entered the water, but about 50 men and officers remained aboard to try to save the ship. Their efforts were heroic. Bombs and torpedoes that had not yet exploded were thrown overboard. For 15 minutes, they fought flames with water hoses. To balance the listing, heavy equipment was moved from starboard to port. One bulkhead in the fire room held strong, preventing further flooding. The destroyers USS Wadsworth, the fleet tug ATR-114, and the fast transport USS Barber arrived to assist. The Wadsworth scanned the skies in case more enemy planes returned. Around noon, LSM-193 and LCSL-83 began towing the Hadley to the temporary anchorage at Aishima, a small island northwest of Okinawa. Meanwhile, LCS-82 and LCS-84 helped the heavily damaged USS Evans. During the May 11th battle, the USS Hadley shot down 23 enemy planes, a record for a single ship in one action. Her guns had fired 81 5-inch shells, 8,950 rounds of 40mm, 5,990 rounds of 20mm, and 801 smokeless gunpowder charges. Despite the devastation, the Hadley survived. 28 sailors died, 68 were wounded, and 2 more later succumbed to their injuries. The Hadley was moved to Karamaretto and placed in dry dock AR-28 for temporary repairs. Navy repair crews arrived to reinforce the battered ship with welded steel beams inside and new plating outside the hull. In July, the tug ATA-199 towed the Hadley to Buckner Bay on Okinawa for resupply, then began a 7,000-mile journey back to the U.S. with a reduced crew. Traveling at just 7 knots, they made stops at Pearl Harbor, Saipan, and Eniwetok before finally arriving at Hunters Point Naval Shipyard near San Francisco on September 26, 1945. Along the way, the tow line broke 9 times, and the ship narrowly avoided a typhoon. The USS Hadley never went to sea again. She was decommissioned on November 7, 1945, and removed from the Naval Register on November 28, after just under 2 years of service. On February 11, 1947, the ship was sold for scrap, a quiet end for such a brave vessel. For their courage during the battle, Commander Mullaney and Gunnery Officer Lieutenant Patrick H. McCann were awarded the Navy Cross. 7 other sailors received the Silver Star, and 7 more were given the Bronze Star. Nearly 100 Purple Hearts were awarded, and the entire crew received a Presidential Unit Citation. But perhaps the greatest tribute came from Mullaney himself, who said he had never commanded a crew that fought more bravely against such overwhelming odds. He praised their refusal to surrender, their willingness to risk everything, and their determination to save the ship even when hope seemed lost. On May 11, 1945, the USS Hadley and her crew made history. In Mullaney's own words, "There is no other record of a destroyer battling heavy enemy air attacks for 95 minutes and taking down 23 planes." He concluded by saying his officers and men were not just excellent destroyer sailors, they were exceptional human beings.